membres des Forces armées canadiennes et honorables invités. Bonjour et bienvenue à la cérémonie de passation de commandement du chef d'état-major de la Défense des Forces armées canadiennes entre le Général Wayne Eyre et la Générale Jennie Carignan. Je suis la lieutenant de vaisseau Christelle Cloutier et j'ai l'honneur d'être votre hôtesse de cérémonie en cette occasion. L'officier présidant la cérémonie d'aujourd'hui sera Son Excellence, la très honorable Mary Simon, gouverneur général et commandante en chef du Canada. Canadian Armed Forces members and honorable guests, good morning and welcome to the Canadian Armed Forces Chief of the Defense Staff Change of Command Ceremony from General Wayne Eyre to General Jennie Carignan. I am Lieutenant Navy Christelle Cloutier, and I have the honor of being your Master of Ceremony on this occasion. The presiding officer for today's ceremony will be Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Mary Simon, Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada. Veuillez vous lever pour l'arrivée des dignitaires et demeurer debout pour notre hymne national. Please rise for the arrival of the dignitaries and remain standing for our national anthem. You may be seated. Veuillez prendre place. I would like to begin this ceremony by acknowledging that the land on which we are gathering today is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. To my right is the Canadian Armed Forces Eagle Staff, carried by Major Dustin Lebel. Je tiens tout d'abord, avant de commencer cette cérémonie, à souligner que les terres sur lesquelles nous sommes rassemblés aujourd'hui font partie du territoire traditionnel non cédé du peuple Anishinaabe algonquin. À ma droite se trouve le bâton à exploit des Forces armées canadiennes, porté par Major Dustin Lebel. Esteemed guests, the Chaplain General of the Canadian Armed Forces, Brigadier General Guy Bellil, will now offer a spiritual reflection. L'aumônier général des Forces armées canadiennes offrira maintenant une réflexion spirituelle.
Today we reflect and honor the service of our current Chief of Staff and welcome his successor. We mark the devotion, guidance, and strength General Wayne Eyre demonstrated during his 3 years with us. This will be his legacy to the defense team and more specifically, a gift to all our members at a time when the Canadian Armed Forces needed a stewardship in navigating the road ahead. for the General Eyre and for his leadership, we are thankful. Nous sommes reconnaissants de l'arrivée de notre nouvelle chef d'état-major de la Défense, la générale Carignan. Puisse l'expérience considérable qu'elle apporte à ce poste lui fournisse la sagesse et la force de remplir ses responsabilités, inspirée par nos valeurs communes de loyauté, d'intégrité, de courage et d'inclusion. Paix, force et succès à vous deux à l'amorce de vos nouveaux défis. Merci.
J'aimerais maintenant inviter le chef d'état-major de la Défense sortant, le général Wayne Eyre, à prendre la parole. The outgoing Chief of the Defense Staff, General Wayne Eyre, will now provide his remarks.
Merci, Christelle. Your Excellency, Prime Minister, Ministers, our former Governors General, the Right Honourable Adrian Clarkson, Right Honourable David Johnston, thank you so much for your support, including as your time as our Commander-in-Chief and currently after you finished your roles. Ambassadors, attachés, government officials, guests, family, and there's many of those, former chiefs of defense, members of the Canadian Armed Forces serving and retired, all too numerous to name individually. But thank you so much for being here. C'est fantastique de voir tout le monde ici. Now, I do want to give a special shout out to some international guests who are with us today. First of all, NATO's Chair of the Military Committee, Admiral Rob Bauer. Rob, thank you for your support and friendship, and moreover, your leadership over these last 3 years of crises and turmoil. Now, your term has been unprecedented in the history of NATO, and I firmly believe that history needs to recognize the pivotal role that you played in NATO coming together and indeed growing as it has over the last number of years. To our Chief of Defense Staff from Jamaica, Vice Admiral Antoinette Wems-Gorman, thank you for being here and your leadership. Your country is our most important and long-standing partner in the Caribbean. The Commander of NORAD and U.S. Northern Command, General Greg Gouy. The NORAD partnership is truly a unique alliance and something that we very much treasure. Every day, for all citizens in our two countries, you have the watch, and I thank you for it. So wow, the day is here, and this roller coaster is coming to an end. I'm so happy that we're doing this ceremony in perhaps my favorite location in the city, the Canadian War Museum, surrounded by the tools of our trade. And it's time to go when the majority of the platforms you served on are here in a museum. So a big thank you to my friends, Carolyn Drumagay, the President and CEO of the Canadian Museum of History and the Canadian War Museum, and Jim Whitman, its Director General. Thank you for your hospitality. I'm going to spend some time acknowledging some individuals and groups. And first of all, our Governor General, Your Excellency. Thank you for embracing your role as our Commander-in-Chief. I very much appreciated the monthly discussions that we've had on a wide range of topics, especially on Canada's north. Your work on reestablishing societal trust in the face of toxic disinformation has to continue, and more on that later. But thank you for your leadership and your counsel over the last number of years. Prime Minister Trudeau, thank you for being here. The circumstances of me coming into this position were not ideal. And you told me early on, we had a discussion, and you told me that, to put it kindly, you gave me a turd sandwich. To which I replied, yes, sir, but you forgot the bread. No, I appreciate the confidence you placed in me and the opportunity to always provide perspective. You know, without fail, I learn from our discussions and the probing, engaged, and informed questions that you posed. Now, you've not always taken my military advice, but you've always listened and put it in the context of everything else, which for students and practitioners of political military relations, you know that this is the way it has to be. This unequal dialogue between elected civilian government and its subservient military is a vital pillar of our democracy. Now, some of our experiences were surreal, such as briefing you during an ongoing coup in Russia, or when missiles and drones were in the air from Iran to Israel, or seeking your approval as the engagement authority for taking down a balloon over Yukon, the first kinetic engagement in NORAD's history since 1958. Now, I expect you and my successor will have similar surreal experiences, but thank you for the opportunity to experience history at this level. To the three defense ministers I work for, so Minister Sajjan, I will never forget that evening on the 24th of February, feels like it was 2021, when you phoned me and asked me to come to your office. And you asked me to be the acting CDS. And something in the back of my head I thought would be just for a matter of weeks. Well, that was 3.5 years ago. Minister Anand, I will never forget calling you exactly 1 year later on the 24th of February, 2022, to tell you that the Russian invasion had begun, an event that would mark most of our time together. I fondly remember introducing you to our friend Carl Gustav in Wainwright. For those of you who know, is an anti-tank weapon that we donated to Ukraine. Your focus on making us a better institution is much appreciated. And thank you for your continuing support for Canada's military in your current role. And finally, Minister Blair, thank you for your strong advocacy. You know, getting the defense policy update through the goalposts was a great achievement. And as we discussed yesterday, your focus on delivering instead of just announcing is what we need. And I wish you the continued success in it. And to all of you, I learned so much working with you, and thank you for your dedication. I want to thank the three deputy ministers I worked with, Jody Thomas, Bill Matthews, and Stephanie Beck. You are true servants of the public. Together, knowing that there are real enemies out there seeking to do our country harm, we forged a unity of effort and purpose focused on one defense team with a common mission of delivering capabilities and readiness. You know, thank you for your steadfast advice, teamwork, and friendship. Je peux d'ailleurs dire la même chose de tous nos collègues de la fonction publique. Merci. For the Right Honourable Adrian Clarkson, thank you for your counsel and friendship over the years, and moreover, your support and leadership as the Colonel-in-Chief of our regiment, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. You are truly inspiring. Now, within the Armed Forces, a few special shout-outs to a number of exceptional leaders and groups. To my two command team partners as the CAF Chief Warrant Officer, Chief Petty Officer First Class Retired Gilles Gregoire, and Chief Warrant Officer Bob McCann. Vous êtes tous les deux des dirigeants exceptionnels et vous démontrez à quel point notre corps de sous-officiers est talentueux. Je vous remercie de votre métier et de vos conseils éclairés, et merci d'être une excellente source d'inspiration. For the Vice Chief of Defence Staff, Lieutenant-General Francis Allen, thank you for taking on this role and providing stability to it. I remember well our conversation when I asked you to take it on and leave your exotic foreign posting in Brussels after only 1 year. Your unwavering support, frank advice, different perspective, consistent positive attitude, and unwavering ethical standards through some tremendously challenging issues were absolutely remarkable. You know, I wish you the best as you shortly embark on your retirement as well. Pour les membres du personnel du cabinet de CEMD, J'ai assisté à l'arrivée à 4 nouvelles équipes et au début d'une 5e, et j'ai toujours eu la chance d'avoir des coéquipiers talentueux et professionnels, qu'il s'agisse des chefs d'état-major ou des chauffeurs. Cette petite équipe a apporté un soutien remarquable pour assurer le commandement et le contrôle des forces armées canadiennes. Merci beaucoup. Finally, for the senior leadership cadre, Armed Forces Council and Executive Council, we could not have had a more collaborative group, working extremely hard every day for the collective good of the Canadian Armed Forces and the country. Thank you for your teamwork, advice, and your leadership. Je tiens à féliciter le Général Carignan d'avoir accepté ce rôle. Je l'ai vu à l'œuvre et j'ai reçu des témoignages de la part de ses subalternes, de ses pairs et de ses supérieurs, et je sais qu'elle possède le caractère, les compétences et le dévouement nécessaires pour réussir et bien servir les forces armées canadiennes et le pays. She has deep international and domestic experience leading operations. She is a graduate of the prestigious School of Advanced Military Studies, a Jedi Knight, as its alumni are known in U.S. circles. And I like that term. You all know my desire to use Star Wars quotations wherever we can. She has highly relevant experience in a range of challenging roles, from Chief of Staff Operations in Army Headquarters, where she did the hard multinational work to forge the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group in Latvia, to being the Commandant of the Collège Militaire Royal at Saint-Jean, where she developed the next generation of leaders, including our Master of Ceremonies. Au cours des 3 dernières années, elle s'est attaquée à certains de nos défis les plus importants, ce qui lui a permis d'acquérir une connaissance approfondie de notre institution et de surcroît du gouvernement dans son ensemble. Jenny, je me souviens de la discussion que nous avons eue il y a 40 mois au sujet de la mise sur pied du nouveau commandement. Lors de nombreuses conversations, nous avons façonné l'établissement d'une nouvelle organisation que vous avez mise sur pied et dirigée. Vous avez accompli un travail extraordinaire alors que je vous avais confié des tâches extrêmement difficiles. Je vous remercie et je vous félicite. You have this. Over the past 2 weeks, we have squeezed in many conversations, and I'm going to share some of that with you. The security situation out there is not getting any better, and we will continue to face many crises, often stacked one upon the other. Based on our adversaries' military buildup, economic and demographic pressures, and their aging tyrants who aim to accomplish much in their diminishing lifetimes, many view peak threat to the world to be at the end of this decade or the next. To do our part in the free world, we need to be at our own peak capability and readiness, and thus peak deterrence, to match that threat. Any gaps between these peaks present significant risk to our country. That said, we have an internal strategy to go forward, nested under our much welcome defense policy review, our North Strong and Free, integrating people, operations, and modernizations. We have real opportunities here. But it must be implemented with a sense of urgency, with timelines move forward, and it will take a whole of government, and in cases, a whole of society to support it. Investing in our people to continue our growth must be at the top of that list. The long arc of history has clearly shown that when we are not at war, we are in an interwar period. And I, for one, don't see that changing. Using peacetime processes and mindsets in this pre-war, and in some cases wartime environment, will not work. The question must change from why should we invest in defense when they can't spend the money, 2, for the good of the nation, what can we do to help convert funding into capabilities and readiness with alacrity? In a recent podcast on the War on the Rocks, a podcast I listen to frequently, our NATO Chair of the Military Committee, Admiral Rob Bauer, it was made clear that we must get past the lethargy, and that was the interviewer's term, not his, that has characterized the West's response to what could be existential threats. Our military history is one of unpreparedness at the outset of war. 1914, 1939, 1950, 2001 are all stark examples. Let's not let that happen again. Urgency is required. That urgency is nowhere more necessary than our continued support for Ukraine in its struggle against vile and inhuman Russian aggression. The implications of the outcome of this war are momentous for our global future. Evil walks the face of the earth, and it must be stopped. Along with the peak threat of war, the other biggest threat to our nation is disinformation. The nature of war remains, in the words of Clausewitz, a contest of human will. But if that will can be affected before the first shot is fired, there is winning without fighting. Our institutions of liberal democracy are under assault with a constant bombardment of conspiracy theories and lies that shape a narrative of distrust and decline. And these are created both within and outside the country. In Communist China's three warfare strategic approach, this is called cognitive warfare. Our own institution is being targeted every day as we see pro-Kremlin trolls tailoring their insidious propaganda to cause maximum harm, in many cases with fabricated personal attacks. General Carignan, you have already seen this. Even if they don't see themselves consciously aligned with hostile states, their ends are the same, and to play on a term that Lenin coined, they are Putin's useful idiots. This is a real issue that allures those who would drag us into the culture wars. That is, we can either treat people with respect and dignity, or we can be operationally effective. This is a false dichotomy. As we know, operational effectiveness is predicated on strong, cohesive teams. This disinformation will be a challenge for the country and the Canadian Armed Forces going forward. And with no clear answers for it or how to deal with it, Jenny, I know you are a fan of Marcus Aurelius, and it's wise to follow his counsel. The best revenge is to not be like that. Related to that last quote, I encourage a continued focus on character. It is so important for our institution where, arguably, our strategic failures over the last 4 decades were of character, not competence. Character must be continually developed, like daily exercise to be physically fit. Humility, collegial frankness, and the willingness to speak truth to power, even awkward truths, are part of it. Remember, ego can be the enemy. It is in times of adversity, personal and professional, that genuine character manifests. We have seen both excellent and very poor examples of that over the last several years. In the words of Adam Grant, if personality is how you respond on a typical day, character is how you show up on a hard day. We are a profession that prepares for and occasionally practices the most challenging of human endeavors, and that is war. And thus, strength of character is essential. Hard days are what we do. General Carignan, je vous ai donné assez de conseils. Vous êtes prête à assumer ce rôle que vous méritez pleinement. Je suis fier de vous céder le fardeau du commandement. My final thanks are for my family, strongly represented here, many coming from out west and around the world, with parents, siblings, cousins, our children, Alexander and Brianna, and especially my wife, Jennifer. I could not have done this without her. For those of you that know her, and you are many, you know just the quality of support I'm talking about. In this period of intense stress, which she shared with me, she kept me grounded. She would not hesitate to keep my ego in check. Every morning as I left, I kissed her goodbye. She would say, "Remember your why." Jennifer, you have put the Canadian Armed Forces front and center, first, for close to 4 decades. And now it is time for us. I love you. So I have 2 final messages. The first one is for the country. The times have changed and history has returned. We live in an era more dangerous than most of us have seen in our lifetimes. To quote a recent article by Roland Paris, and Roland, I think you're here, Canada must awaken from its long, uncomfortable slumber. A new sense of urgency and resolve must ultimately come from within. And numerous times throughout my career, in hotspots around the world, I have seen firsthand the thin veneer of civilization ripped away, and what remains is not good. But equally, throughout my career, I've also seen how good people of strong character, unified in purpose, can do great good. We live in dangerous times. Avoiding great power war through deterrence and statecraft, in conjunction with our allies, friends, and partners, must be a priority. This is underpinned by hard power. Our vital national interests, the prosperity and sovereignty of our country, and the protection of its people depends on it. There is no more important role for the country. Nous avons besoin d'un dialogue national sur la sécurité et d'une approche renouvelée de matière de résilience nationale. To do this, we need confidence in ourselves. We have every right to be confident. The last month, at the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings, I was reflecting on the fact that we as a country are capable of doing great things. Compared to almost every other country out there, we have tremendous strengths, and I know our people are capable of doing great things. Nous vivons dans un pays formidable. My final message is for the members of the Canadian Armed Forces. Whenever I see you in action, I am inspired. We have an institution filled with great people who have a greater purpose, which is to serve. You are part of something bigger than yourselves. You are the greatest foreign policy instrument of this country, and indeed, you are our country's ultimate insurance policy. Vous nous rendez si fiers, même si tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes ne le réalisent pas encore, le pays fera de plus en plus appel à vous. Et je sais que vous répondez à l'appel du devoir. Despite the challenges out there in the world and what we'll face in the darker future, I am confident that we are an institution on the upswing and know that you will tackle these challenges with the same dedication, professionalism, and fighting spirit as those who went before you. And for those starting their careers, I am envious, for as I finished mine, I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. You know, I've sometimes joked that I was the accidental CDS, but in all seriousness, it was my honor to serve you. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Général. I would like to invite the Governor-General, General Eyre, and General Carignan on the stage for the passing of the Canadian Armed Forces Ensign. The Canadian Armed Forces Ensign is also the distinguishing flag of the Chief of the Defence Staff. It is a white flag that bears both the Canadian flag and the Canadian Armed Forces badge. General Eyre, in passing the ensign to the Governor-General, relinquishes his command to his superior. In turn, General Carignan, upon receiving the ensign from the Governor-General, confirms her acceptance of her new command. Le drapeau des Forces armées canadiennes est aussi le drapeau distinctif du chef d'état-major de la Défense. Ce drapeau est blanc et porte à la fois le drapeau canadien et l'insigne des Forces armées canadiennes. En passant le drapeau à la gouverneure générale, le général Eyre marque la fin de son mandat. En recevant le drapeau des mains de la gouverneure générale, la générale Carignan marque sa prise de pouvoir comme chef d'état-major de la Défense. J'invite maintenant la gouverneure générale ainsi que le général Eyre et la générale Carignan à signer le parchemin officiel confirmant ainsi la passation des pouvoirs. I now invite the Governor-General with General Eyre and General Carignan to sign the official scroll that authenticate the transfer of command.
That feels about 100 pounds lighter.
The drivers of the Chief of the Defense Staff, Corporal Maxime Kimcote and Corporal Alex Connolly, will now come forward to present General Eyre with the Canadian Armed Forces pennant. Les chauffeurs du chef d'état-major de la Défense présenteront maintenant au général Eyre le fanion des Forces armées canadiennes. J'invite maintenant Son Excellence, la très honorable Mary Simon, gouverneure générale et commandante en chef du Canada, à prendre la parole. Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Mary Simon, Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada, will now deliver her remarks.
Bonjour. Good morning. Tungasugiti ilunasi. Prime Minister, Madame Clarkson and Mr. Saul, Mr. and Mrs. Johnston, dignitaries, parliamentarians, veterans, members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and dear guests of honor, General Eyre and General Carignan. Today, I wish to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. This acknowledgement is part of the full history of Canada, which includes Indigenous stories and voices from coast to coast to coast. En tant que commandant en chef, je suis honoré de présider cette cérémonie. As Commander-in-Chief, I have the distinct pleasure of meeting with members and veterans of the Canadian Armed Forces on a regular basis. I join you in remembrance. I celebrate your accomplishments through honors ceremonies and milestone anniversaries. I also have the privilege of meeting with members of all ranks and occupations across the country and learning more about what they do. I most recently visited troops at 9 Wing Gander, where I learned about the essential search and rescue services they offer across the region. Every member of the forces play an invaluable role in keeping Canadians safe. Today, we have a unique opportunity to thank General Eyre for his service while welcoming General Carignan as the next Chief of Defense Staff. Le Général Eyre a toujours été animé par l'esprit de service. General Eyre, as you prepare for your retirement, I want to acknowledge your exceptional contributions as the Chief of Defense Staff. Throughout your tenure, you have shown steadfast leadership in the face of domestic and international challenges, the pandemic, natural disasters, geopolitical conflicts, including the war in Ukraine, in short, a time of global polycrisis. You have advocated for modernization and readiness of the Canadian Armed Forces. You have worked towards increasing the force's capabilities from within to ensure it can continue to effectively defend Canadian interests at home and abroad. You have also diligently promoted the high standards of the Canadian Armed Forces, steering the institution and its members on a more inclusive and sustainable path. The profession of arms is unique and challenging. The service and sacrifices of Canadian Armed Forces members are also soldiered by their families and loved ones. Jennifer, I wish to take this opportunity to share my profound gratitude with you for the support you've showed your husband and the wider forces community throughout his career and most recently during his role as Chief of Defense Staff. And to General Carignan's husband, Eric, whom I understand is watching online, thank you for your continued support and that of your family. The commitment of military families and friends across Canada does not go unnoticed. Le dévouement et le professionnalisme des membres des forces armées canadiennes m'inspirent. General Carignan, you embody the best of what we admire in our Canadian Armed Forces: devotion to service, leadership, innovation, professionalism. As you assume the command of the Canadian Armed Forces, I wish to recognize your long-standing and exemplary service to Canada. Throughout your career, you have exemplified good leadership at home, during flood relief efforts in Quebec, and in the face of recent fundamental changes within the forces. Abroad, at the helm of the Task Force Kandahar Engineer Regiment and of the NATO mission Iraq. These are but a few examples. Great challenges lie ahead as you assume the role of Chief of the Defense Staff. I have full confidence in your proven ability to inspire and lead under dynamic circumstances. General Eyre and General Carignan, you are united by your steadfast courage. Courage to put your lives at risk to defend Canadians and global peace. Courage to innovate. Courage to enact change. And courage to lead. Merci pour votre courage, pour votre leadership, et pour votre service. I ask that you join me in thanking them for their service.
Thank you, Your Excellency. J'invite maintenant le très honorable Justin Trudeau, Premier ministre du Canada, à prendre la parole. The Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, will now present his remarks.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis très heureux d'être ici en compagnie de la gouverneure générale Simon et du ministre Blair, General Eyre, General Carignan, members of the Canadian Armed Forces, excellencies, friends, and colleagues. Thank you all for joining us on this historic day. When Wayne Eyre joined the Army Cadets at age 12, I know he had big dreams, but I also know it is unlikely that he had any idea that he would one day serve as Chief of the Defence Staff of this great country. On top of that, he couldn't have predicted that he would hold this position during such a consequential time for Canada and for the world. But what the young Wayne did already know at that age was the importance of discipline, service, and leadership. Those are some of the values he exemplified throughout his outstanding career here in Canada and abroad, including in the United States, Cyprus, Croatia, Afghanistan, and South Korea. General Eyre was the first non-US deputy commander of United Nations Command Korea in its history, and as such, he was the most senior Canadian officer ever permanently stationed in the Asia-Pacific region. Here at home, he commanded the task force that secured the 2010 G8 summit, and he commanded the military response to both the 2015 Saskatchewan wildfires and the 2016 Fort McMurray evacuation. His exceptional career as a soldier, as a commander in combat arms, and as a senior leader has earned him awards for meritorious service from Canada and from some of our closest allies and partners like the US, France, and South Korea. His decorations include the Commander of the Order of Military Merit, the Commander-in-Chief Unit Commendation, the Chief of the Defence Staff Commendation, and many, many, many others, a number of which should also have been awarded to Jennifer for her service. General Eyre, Wayne, you have always put the brave women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces and the safety of Canadians at the forefront of your priorities. We will always be grateful for your service, always, and I will particularly be grateful for your advice and counsel, always thoughtful and true. You referred to the complicated moment in which you became CDS. I have absolutely no doubt that in that case, the universe unfolded as it should. And you were the exact right person to help lead Canada through incredibly difficult times these past 3.5 years. And on behalf of all Canadians, thank you for all that you've done in leadership and in service. En tant que membre des Forces armées canadiennes, vous tous ici savez mieux que quiconque à quel point on vit dans un monde de plus en plus dangereux. Plusieurs d'entre vous ont vu les effets dévastateurs des guerres, du terrorisme, de l'instabilité, de la violence politique. Vous avez aussi vu et été là pour aider les Canadiens qui ont vécu les conséquences des changements climatiques, comme les feux de forêt et les inondations. Face à tant d'incertitudes, on continue d'avoir besoin de leadership fort et responsable. Et c'est exactement ces qualités que la générale Jennie Carignan va apporter avec elle au poste de chef d'état-major de la Défense. General Carignan, in an interview last year, you pointed out that as an engineer, you can predict to a certain extent how a system might react based on science and evidence and models. But over the course of your career, including in operations in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the the Golan Heights, and Afghanistan, you also learned that there is no perfect model to predict the outcomes of wars, global instability, and human tragedy. You've demonstrated time and time again the ability to lead with both strength and flexibility. In Afghanistan, you were deployed to head the Task Force Kandahar Engineer Regiment. In Iraq, you led NATO Mission Iraq to help strengthen Iraqi security institutions and forces to fight terrorism and stabilize the country. Ici au Canada, une des premières fois qu'on s'était rencontrés, on a empilé des sacs de sable ensemble pour aider les gens de Gatineau pendant l'inondation de 2019, juste de l'autre côté de la rivière. You understand how we always have to be ready in the face of uncertainty. You are humble, yet ambitious for our forces and for Canada. You've shown a tremendous sense of agility, vision, and courage as Chief of Professional Conduct and Culture. And one of the reasons you were successful in this position is that you understood that change was not necessary for the sake of change itself. It was necessary to make the Canadian Armed Forces stronger for the future. And of course, one of the most important things we can do to continue growing the forces ever stronger is to put someone of your caliber in the top job. En parlant de rendre nos forces armées encore plus fortes pour l'avenir, la semaine dernière, au sommet de l'OTAN, j'ai annoncé notre plan pour atteindre l'objectif de 2% du PIB d'ici 2032. Since 2015, we've added over $175 billion in defense spending. Canada is now among the top 5 NATO allies when it comes to absolute spending increase on defense. By the end of this decade, we're on track to almost triple our defense budget. General Eyre has played a central role in our recent efforts to modernize and strengthen our military. By increasing our defense spending to 2% of GDP by 2032, we're building a stronger, more capable, more resilient Canadian Armed Forces that can protect our sovereignty and that of our allies in a changing world. And General Carignan is without a doubt exactly the right person to continue to deliver on increased defense investment. We are focused on getting all of you who serve the tools and resources you need to protect Canadians and to protect our values. Canada has the best soldiers in the world because of your strength, your resilience, your skills, but most of all because you not only strongly believe in the ideals that make our country so great, you dedicate your life and your service to them. General Carignan, you were the first woman in Canadian Armed Forces history to command a combat arms unit. Now you... There's another one too, you might want to hold for that. And now you are the very first woman to ever become Chief of the Defense Staff, the very first in the G7 and in the G20. You are a role model for all Canadians and for the world. In these ever so challenging times, we must remember that strength, resilience, and optimism are always going to be the best way forward. Le monde traverse une période de turbulence, mais avec des leaders comme chacun de vous, avec la générale Carignan aux commandes, avec des héros comme le général Eyre, qui laisse en héritage une culture toujours plus éthique et stratégique. Les forces armées et donc tous les Canadiens sont entre bonnes mains. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier Ministre. I now invite the Minister of National Defense, the Honourable Bill Blair, to provide his remarks. Le ministre de la Défense nationale, l'Honorable Bill Blair, prendra maintenant la parole.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Your Excellency, Governor-General Simon, Prime Minister, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, Mrs. Clarkson, Mr. Johnson, General Eyre and General Carignan, General and Flag Officers, honored guests, family and friends. My sincere gratitude for your presence here today. This is an extraordinary day. It's an extraordinary day for the Canadian Armed Forces, but I also believe it's an extraordinary day for Canada. It is entirely fitting, as General Eyre has said, that we are meeting in this extraordinary place. This museum was built to showcase the outstanding, proud, and remarkable history of the Canadian Armed Forces. It is a history of service, of strength, resolve, and courage. And throughout 2 world wars, the conflict in Korea, the Cold War, and countless peacekeeping missions around the globe, Canadians have stood up for peace and the rule of law. From Afghanistan to now in Latvia to the Indo-Pacific, our armed forces have and continue to represent the very best that Canada has to offer. And today, we are gathered to pay tribute to 2 of the most outstanding examples of military leadership and Canadian leadership that I have had the presence and the privilege of working with, General Wayne Eyre and Canada's new Chief of Defence Staff, General Jennie Carignan. When I was appointed to be the Minister of Defence about a year ago, and upon my appointment, I had a conversation with my American counterpart who told me that he congratulated me and said, "You now have the best job in government, but it's also the hardest job in government." As you've heard this morning, the reason for that is because Canada and its allies are facing a significantly growing list of challenges and risks. Our Arctic is warming at 4 times the global average. It's making our territory and our waters far more accessible, not only to our opportunities, but to our adversaries. The international rules to keep our nation safe are facing new threats, and at the same time, we are witnessing the character of conflict is also rapidly changing. And as our government has navigated through these challenges over the past 3 years, we've been able to rely upon the experience and steady leadership of an outstanding Chief of Defence, General Wayne Eyre. General Wayne Eyre has had an outstanding career of military service, as has been articulated by others, on missions spanning around the entire globe, whether as Commander of the 3rd Canadian Division, Deputy Commander of the United Nations Command in Korea, or Commander of the Canadian Army. General, you have brought a remarkable stability, experience, and passion to every job that we have asked of you. And in fact, on the very first day of my appointment as the Minister of Defence, I had a conversation with Jane Eyre that has resonated and stayed with me from the moment I met him. One of the first things I said to him was, I said, "Well, General, let's see what we can get done for your people." And he stopped me dead in my tracks and he says, "Oh, Minister," he says, "there are people now." And it's something that I've taken to heart. I have seen that commitment to your people, our people, demonstrated every day by your leadership and by your unwavering commitment to the men and women who serve. You've been a champion for the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces, and you have been a strong advocate, more than a strong advocate, for building up our readiness. We've worked hard together to develop Canada's new defence policy. I want to acknowledge your leadership, your advocacy, your advice, and your patience at times, as we have worked together to determine exactly what we need to be ready. And as we worked hard to develop our new defence policy, your strategic vision was instrumental. It was absolutely key in determining what we will need. I want to take this opportunity to offer my very sincere thanks to your leadership, your friendship, and your patience and your advice. I believe that the Canadian Armed Forces is on an upward trajectory, and you have set us on a strong foundation for all the work that is before us. I want to thank you for that leadership, because we are, as a result of your advocacy, recapitalizing our core fleets. We're boosting Canada's national and global presence by leading the NATO brigade in Latvia. You and I have visited that together. It was a proud moment for Canada and will be continued to be a proud moment because of all of your hard work. We've deployed our warships in Europe and the Indo-Pacific, and we're equipping and doing a very important work in helping the Ukrainians with the skills that they need to win. And I believe through your leadership, we have been building a stronger and more capable and better prepared force. We clearly have a lot of work to do, but you have set us on a path that I believe must inevitably lead to a brighter, stronger future. General Eyre, you are clearly leaving the armed forces in a better place. And on behalf of all Canadians, and all of us who've had the privilege to work with you, I want to thank you for your service to our country. And one of the things I also know is that a commitment of lifetime of service carries with it many burdens. And often those burdens are carried by family. And so I also want to take the opportunity to thank you, Jennifer, and your entire family and all of Wayne's friends, because the burden of service and of leadership, particularly in the role that he has most recently held as our Chief of Defense, carries with it many burdens for family. By his absences, by his 24 hours, 7 days a week service, you have also carried those burdens. And so although he proudly wears those medals, I suspect you and your family have earned them as well. And so let me also take the opportunity to offer you a very sincere thanks for your commitment to service to this country. It's made a difference, and I believe most sincerely, it's helped to make Wayne a stronger and better leader. So thank you for that. As Wayne himself and others have spoken about, the demands on the Canadian Armed Forces are growing. It is more than necessary, if I may quote Churchill, it's not good enough that we just do our best. We must do what is required. General Eyre has set us on that path, but he has also demonstrated to us very clearly that strong leadership for the Canadian Armed Forces for the future is also essential. I often reflected, as I had the opportunity to work next to General Eyre and his team, that he was truly a leader of leaders. And I have also witnessed the hard work that he does to make sure that his leadership team is strong and ready as well. And I believe that contribution has led us also to this day, with the appointment of General Jennie Carignan as Canada's first woman and our newest Chief of Defence Staff. Congratulations, General Carignan. In her 35 years of service to Canada, General Carignan, as you've heard, has commanded 2 combat engineer regiments and led more than 10,000 soldiers in the 2nd Canadian Division. And from 2019 to 2010, she led NATO mission in Iraq, strengthening Iraq's security forces to fight terrorism and deliver stability for the Iraqi people. And most recently, she has taken on one of the greatest challenges of the Canadian Armed Forces and served as our first Chief of Professional Conduct and Culture. And in this particular role, General Carignan has led the charge to build a more inclusive institution and to implement external recommendations to ensure that we better support all of the men and women who serve in the Canadian Armed Forces. General Carignan has a proven track record of excellence, and it demonstrates exactly the type of leadership that this institution will need in the challenging future ahead. And at this pivotal moment in our national security, we clearly have some very important work to do. We must build up our military capabilities with the sense of urgency that has been shared with you today. We must strengthen the foundations of our institutions, and we must create a Canadian Armed Forces that is supportive of all the men and women who make that important choice to serve their country, and we must also be there for their families. General Carignan, I'm very much looking forward to the opportunity to work with you to deliver on the new capabilities that the Canadian Armed Forces require. I am very confident that you will remain the strong leader in our work to build a more inclusive institution, and I am equally confident that we will build back our numbers by doing things differently, by embracing innovation, and to demonstrating to Canadians that there is a remarkable and brilliant future available to them in the service to their country. Honored guests, Canada is fortunate to have outstanding leaders like General Eyre and General Carignan. We are blessed to have thousands of dedicated armed forces members serving our country right across Canada and around the world. They are among the very best of us. and we must be there for them. We must support them every step in their careers, and on behalf of the Government of Canada, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank all of those who have made the choice to serve for everything that you do to protect our security and our prosperity and our nation. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister. Il me fait plaisir de vous présenter notre nouvelle chef d'état-major de la Défense, la générale Carignan. It is my honor to invite our new Chief of the Defense Staff, General Carignan, to address this gathering.
Bonjour, good morning. Merci beaucoup de vous joindre à nous ce matin. Depuis les tout premiers jours au sein des Forces armées canadiennes, j'ai toujours été inspirée de servir côte à côte avec nos matelots, soldats, aviateurs et opérateurs des forces spéciales, de la force régulière et de la réserve, de même que nos collègues de la fonction publique. To be called upon to lead as Chief of Defense Staff within this great Canadian institution is an honor and a privilege that comes also with an enormous responsibility which humbles me. Your Excellency, our Commander-in-Chief, I intend to carry out these duties with fortitude and unwavering commitment, but also flexibility and the curiosity to continue listening and learning from those who have committed their service to the defense of Canadians and those outside of our organization who share our commitment to a strong and secure Canada. Monsieur le Premier ministre, merci de votre confiance. En me confiant ces responsabilités, je compte bien servir avec expertise et sans prétention. Je crois que cette équipe de la Défense a un brillant avenir à un moment crucial dans notre histoire auquel nous sommes appelés à nous tenir debout pour protéger notre démocratie. Minister Blair, thank you for your steadfast support for our defense team. I believe in our Reg Force and Reserve Force members who serve their country with pride and courage, and in our public service professionals whose contribution is essential to the success of the Canadian Forces. General Eyre, dear Wayne, as you pass the torch to me, I would like to thank you for your lifetime of leadership and service, and for the generous gift of your time during this important transition period. I wish you and Jennifer the best on this new journey called retirement. I have no doubts you will also make this endeavor a success. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you leave us a legacy of stability in a very turbulent period within the CAF and national defense, but also in a global environment. On your watch, we have achieved clarity regarding where this institution needs to go and developed a sharp focus on how to get there. Your vision of a CAF with a reconstituted strength and an evolved culture, a CAF that balances present operational demands with preparations for a fast-approaching future. That has served well in tumultuous times. The renewed sense of purpose we have enjoyed under your leadership is the result of your tireless efforts, a deep faith in our institution and our people, but even more important than that, listening. L'écoute avec intention, curiosité et le désir authentique de comprendre vraiment ce que nos membres disent, pensent et ressentent. You have been an extraordinary leader, a valued mentor, and through your sense of duty, a model to us all. You have led by example through your integrity, your courage, and your resolve. Et personnellement, vous avez été une inspiration pour moi et votre leadership, le phare qui nous a montré la voie dans des périodes volatiles. J'ai certainement de grandes bottes à remplir. Wherever this journey takes me as CDS, thanks to you, I am starting out on a well-lit path. Merci beaucoup. Au cours des dernières semaines, beaucoup de gens m'ont demandé comment je me sens. Over the past few weeks, many people have asked me how I feel. Although many emotions initially collided with each other, today I can say that I feel ready, poised, and supported to take on this manifold challenge. Aujourd'hui, je peux dire que je me sens prête et bien appuyée pour entreprendre ce défi multiforme. Les conflits en Ukraine et au Proche-Orient, les tensions mondiales, les changements climatiques, les demandes additionnelles pour notre personnel ici et outre-mer et les menaces envers nos institutions démocratiques ne sont que quelques-uns des défis complexes auxquels nous devons faire face et répondre. Over the past 38 years, every experience and opportunity I've been offered, along with the teams and individuals I've had the privilege to work with, have had a formative impact on me and allowed me to develop, grow, adapt, and learn in various situations. From combat operations to peacekeeping missions, from domestic operations to security sector reform missions, like many members of the Canadian Armed Forces, I know what it's like to stand fast, to face an enemy that wants to do you harm. But I also know what it feels like to be safe within your team because we trust each other with our lives. This is really the essence of what we are about, which is building strong teams who can not only face very difficult situations, but also can come back healthy from doing this work. Toutes ces expériences m'ont bien préparée pour remplir le rôle de chef d'état-major de la Défense et je suis reconnaissante d'avoir cette opportunité de servir mon pays et de bâtir sur les fondations de mes prédécesseurs. Citing Colonel de Torcat, leaders are first and foremost builders who know that nothing significant happens on this earth without a little bit of love. He was French. We have to understand that. Well, I love this institution, what it stands for, and its fundamentally important mission for Canadians. I love the people who serve generously and passionately day in and day out. I love the values we uphold and what we are about, which is standing on guard for thee, Canada. Uniformed members and civilians who serve on our great defense team alike. Nous faisons face à plusieurs défis internes, tels le recrutement, la rétention et la conduite professionnelle, sur lesquels nous avons mis beaucoup d'efforts au cours des dernières années. Nous continuerons d'en faire une priorité et aussi en tant que chef de la profession des armes, tous les aspects de la conduite professionnelle et du service honorable continueront d'être au cœur de ce qu'on fait. We know the challenges we face and what we need to do to address them. We will continue tackling them with courage, transparency, and determination. Thanks to my predecessors, much change is already underway. Many new improvements in supporting and leading our people have been implemented, improvements that are directly contributing to a transformation of the environment in which team members operate, can grow, and thrive. At the same time, we are acquiring new critical capabilities. The construction on the production test module for the Royal Canadian Navy's first New River-class destroyer has begun. The Air Force will take delivery of its first new fighter jets in the coming years, and efforts to modernize our continental defense system are underway. Nous contribuons aussi à la défense de l'Europe en menant le groupement tactique multinational de l'OTAN en Lettonie. Ce dernier est en cours d'expansion vers une brigade. Ceux-ci ne sont que quelques exemples de transformations prenant place au sein de la défense. Not only do I feel ready, but I also feel very well supported, whether it is across town here in Ottawa or more broadly within defense. I am absolutely blessed to have Stephanie Beck as my partner to tackle the intricacies of the department. Welcome back, Stephanie. Where are you? Welcome back, Stephanie, and thank you for accepting this very important role. I look forward to working with you. To our incoming Vice Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant-General Steve Kelsey. Steve, I'm looking forward to working with you, and once more, because we'll have a chance to finally work on all these problems we have been complaining about a few years ago. Absolutely delighted to team up with you again. L'adjudant-chef des Forces armées canadiennes, adjudant-chef Bob McCann, c'est un grand plaisir et un privilège de vous retrouver comme partenaire d'équipe de commandement. I have the utmost respect for and confidence in our formidable combined team of general officers, flag officers, and assistant deputy ministers. Many of us will be taking on new roles, and I'm very much looking forward to working together. To all CAF and National Defense Public Service employees, I am thankful to count you as valued members of the defense team. Regardless of what your role is, and where you are in the organization, every action you take is important. Everyone matters. You are all important to the mission. Together, we can move mountains. Au cours des dernières années, j'ai eu l'occasion d'observer de près l'excellente collaboration interdépartementale. I have observed a team of highly professional deputy ministers who clearly understand that the solution to very complex global problems we are facing are rarely answered by one department only. All our colleagues from CSC to CSIS, RCMP, emergency preparedness, global affairs, immigration, health, public safety, transport, finance, the Privy Council Office, and Treasury Board, I'd like to give a special shout out to the Clerk of the Privy Council, Mr. Hannaford, John, for orchestrating this flurry of collaborative work. I'm looking forward to partnering with you all to navigate this challenging world. You'll be instrumental in your roles. To our international partners, and more specifically our close ally, the United States, whether it is through our combined approach to continental defense via NORAD, through NATO, alongside our Five Eyes partner, collaboration is so key to ensuring our collective security. I am also looking forward to working with you, General Bauer, General Guillot, Vice Admiral Remis Gorman. Thank you for being here today. Enfin, à ma famille, qui, je crois, regarde virtuellement, et c'est ceux qui donnent tout son sens à ce que je fais. Merci de votre inconditionnel soutien. Typiquement, comme beaucoup de familles militaires, aujourd'hui, nous sommes éparpillés entre les États-Unis et le Canada. Mon conjoint Éric et mes 3 garçons sont dans l'ouest des États-Unis, en voyage qu'on avait planifié il y a plusieurs mois. Ma fille traverse les Rocheuses canadiennes présentement en route vers sa nouvelle mutation. Que voulez-vous? On ne pouvait pas prévoir ce qui allait se passer en juillet, alors on avait fait des plans il y a plusieurs mois déjà. On s'est donc adapté, comme les familles militaires savent si bien le faire, c'est-à-dire voir les choses telles qu'elles sont et non comme on aimerait les voir. À Éric, mon partenaire et complice depuis plus de 33 ans, merci d'être toujours là. Bien avant moi, tu as été le premier à croire en moi. Merci de ton soutien, ta patience, ta force. Je n'y arriverai pas sans toi. À mes enfants qui ont eu confiance en nous, ces parents nomades, on vous a transplantés dans plusieurs endroits au Canada et aux États-Unis et vous vous êtes épanouis à chaque fois au travers vos épreuves et vos succès. Merci d'être qui vous êtes. Vous êtes ma grande source d'inspiration. Un merci tout spécial à la femme forte qu'est ma mère et qui m'a toujours encouragée à penser de façon critique et à repousser les limites. Monsieur le Premier ministre, bonne chance. Je l'entends encore me dire, « Jennie, tu sais, on n'a jamais changé vers un monde meilleur sans, en quelque part, savoir quand c'est le temps de défier les règles. » À mes frères et sœurs qui sont représentés ici par Jonathan et sa conjointe Hélène, merci de vos encouragements, intérêts et appuis au cours de toutes ces années. Merci d'être là encore aujourd'hui. So I embark on my tenure as your Chief of Defense Staff with confidence. Confidence in our team, in our partners, and in Canadians. We've got this. My expectation of you as CDS is straightforward: to always do your best, to stand shoulder to shoulder and work together, and to be an influence for good within our institution, across our country, and around the world. My promise to you in return is that I will always do the same. I thank you for your trust and look forward to what the future brings. Bravo Zulu, let's get back to work. Miigwech, thank you, merci.
Merci, Général. The Senior Aide-de-Camp to the Chief of the Defense Staff, Major Jessie Delisle, will now present flowers to Mrs. Jennifer Eyre on behalf of all Canadian Armed Forces personnel for her outstanding and unconditional support these past 40 years. L'aide-de-camp senior du chef d'état-major de la Défense, Major Jessie Delisle, présentera maintenant un bouquet de fleurs à Madame Jennifer Eyre au nom de tout le personnel des Forces armées canadiennes en signe de remerciement pour son soutien remarquable et inconditionnel ces 40 dernières années. Merci, Madame. In lieu of flowers, in honor of General Carignan's family, the Canadian Armed Forces will give a donation to support our troops, the official charitable cause of the Canadian Armed Forces. Au lieu de fleurs, en l'honneur de la famille de la générale Carignan, les Forces armées canadiennes feront un don à Appuyons nos troupes, l'œuvre de bienfaisance officielle des Forces armées canadiennes. Veuillez maintenant vous lever pour l'hymne royal et demeurer debout pour le départ des dignitaires. Please stand for the royal anthem and remain standing for the departure of the dignitaries. I now invite General Eyre's family to follow the procession. J'invite maintenant la famille du général Eyre à suivre le cortège. Chers invités, ceci complète la cérémonie de passation de commandement du chef d'état-major de la Défense. Vous êtes tous conviés à vous joindre aux dignitaires pour une réception qui sera offerte dans le foyer du musée. This concludes the Chief of the Defense Staff Change of Command ceremony. You are all invited to join the dignitaries for a reception offered in the lobby of the museum. Thank you and have a pleasant day. Merci et bonne journée.
Bonjour tout le monde. Ça me fait très plaisir d'être ici ce matin. Merci beaucoup d'être là. Puis ça va me faire plaisir de répondre à vos questions. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Really happy with your interest, and then we'll be glad to answer your questions.
Millions de TVA. Félicitations d'abord, Général Carignan, pour votre nomination, votre arrivée en poste. Beaucoup parlent du fait que vous êtes la première femme à occuper ce poste, non seulement au Canada, mais au sein de l'OTAN aussi. Qu'est-ce que ça change pour les Forces armées canadiennes d'avoir une femme, selon vous? Qu'est-ce que ça va changer?
Bien, c'est certain que ça peut donner un modèle, ça peut donner un changement en termes de ce qui est maintenant possible pour les femmes et plusieurs communautés là, qui ont peut-être jamais eu cette chance-là avant. Alors, c'est certainement une belle étape de franchie et le fruit de plusieurs années de changement au sein des Forces armées canadiennes. Ce qu'il faut savoir aussi, c'est que je suis pas la seule. On a une belle relève aussi qui s'en vient. Alors, c'est une question, encore une fois, de changement générationnel là, qui est à l'œuvre présentement. Alors, j'ai beaucoup de bonnes candidates et de bons candidats pour continuer le travail à la défense.
Défis au sein des Forces armées canadiennes, recrutement difficile, rétention de personnel, l'équipement aussi. Comment décrivez-vous l'état des Forces armées actuellement?
Alors, mon travail à moi, c'est de convertir ce que les Canadiens veulent faire avec leurs forces canadiennes et on va répondre aux demandes des Canadiens en termes de convertir en capacité et en ressources et en préparation opérationnelle ce que les Canadiens vont nous demander de faire. Et ça, on fait ça à travers le gouvernement. Alors, on a une routine constante de nouvel équipement qui arrive. On a constamment des nouvelles choses à changer au niveau doctrinaire et peu importe, mais c'est une évolution qui est constante dans le temps. Donc, General Eyre a parlé là, certains des véhicules ici là, qui sont maintenant au musée. Alors, c'est comme ça qu'on s'adapte au fil des années. Présentement, la science derrière ça, ça va être de prioriser et de séquencer ce qu'on a à faire parce qu'on a beaucoup de travail à faire pour amener toutes ces nouvelles capacités-là en place.
First of all, Mike Lecouture from CTV News. Despite some of the rosy picture that some had painted on stage, as my colleague just mentioned, there are challenges ahead, recruitment and retention, the equipment issue. I think a lot of people might look at this and ask, why do you want this job?
We consistently have those challenges as military forces across the world. Evolving military forces over time is what we do. My job as CDS is to translate Canadians' investment, what Canadians decide to invest in their defense, into readiness and into capacity. So, and this is what we regularly do. If you look around, I think General Eyre mentioned that some of the equipment, when him and I joined the forces, are now at the museum, but there's a constant inflow of new capacity and a new equipment and a new people also inflowing. So we are aware of all the changes that needs to be done. The change is already happening on the challenges in recruiting. So a lot of transformation is currently happening. And then we will continue to do that to make sure that we create readiness for the defense of Canadians.
What qualities do you think that you possess that will help move the military forward in the way that it's needed to be, that so many have called for many, many years now?
I think I am known for being comfortable with uncertainty and with complexity. So as an engineer, I concentrated early in my careers on technical issues, which is with science. You can fix pretty much and predict pretty much anything. But when we move to strategic global problems, this is when you need an agility to be able to deal with complexity. And in dealing with complexity means gathering around many different people with different perspectives to tackle those very difficult problems, to actually start acting on them, and then slowly and increasingly getting to know them better, but also solving eventually.
Bonjour, Général Carignan, Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. Avec félicitations, vous êtes la première. Certaines au sein des forces disent probablement « enfin ». Vous dites quoi à celles qui sont dans les forces présentement, à votre fille, et à celles qui songent s'y joindre? Le fait que vous soyez maintenant la première à la tête des Forces armées canadiennes, ça change quoi pour elles?
Ce que je leur dis, c'est que c'est possible, en fait. C'est le message général de ce que ça veut dire aujourd'hui. Tout est possible, toutes les portes sont ouvertes. Il y a beaucoup de barrières systémiques qui ont été enlevées, c'est pas terminé, elles ne sont pas toutes enlevées. Il y a beaucoup des perceptions et des préjugés inconscients qui sont toujours là en 2024. Mais ce que ça dit, c'est que c'est maintenant possible. Alors, on a maintenant la capacité d'avoir les portes ouvertes pour que les femmes puissent servir dans la capacité qu'ils décident de servir.
Si on regarde les dépenses de l'OTAN, atteindre le 2% du PIB d'ici 2032, est-ce que les forces ont besoin d'atteindre ce niveau-là avant? Est-ce qu'avec toutes les menaces qu'on a dans le monde, auxquelles vous avez fait référence, auxquelles le général Eyre a fait référence, est-ce que 2032, c'est pas trop tard?
Bien, ce qu'on est en train de faire, c'est de s'assurer qu'on comprend bien ce qu'il faut faire en premier. Donc, ça va être le premier travail à faire avec ma nouvelle équipe. On va regarder ce qu'il faut faire en priorité et s'assurer que c'est fait dans la bonne séquence. On ne pourra pas faire tout en même temps. Et ça va être un dialogue constant avec toutes les agences ici au centre pour s'assurer qu'on priorise les bonnes choses, que tout ça est prêt à être actionné pour développer la capacité qu'on a besoin de développer au bon moment. Donc, on sait ce qu'on a besoin quand. Maintenant, ça va être de le prioriser, de le séquencer puis de le faire arriver dans le bon ordre.
Merci.
Murray Brewster with CBC News. General Carignan, welcome and congratulations.
Thanks, Murray.
My first question to you is, my colleagues have talked about capacity, talked about equipment, have talked about coming through the door. What is, from your perspective, the most important priority and the most important thing that you have to fix right now?
So at the moment, I will say it's recruiting because you need the people to crew all of these platforms. So the priority is to make sure that we welcome a whole range of Canadian expertise and quality people to ensure that we have the people we need to render our forces ready to crew all of these platforms. So yes, the equipment is part of it, but we will need to get people in, train them, and then so that they can actually affect all of these changes also that we want to do within the institution.
General, this is a moment in history. I'd like to know what was going through your mind when the flag was handed to you.
To me, it's a bit of a consolidation of all this past 38 years that I've been doing stuff. It was kind of a natural step. You don't really believe it until you're there. We had so many quality people also that could do the work. but then so grateful for having been considered. But then again, that's what really was going to run. I'm ready for this. I've worked all of this time, and then this is it, like ready to go to the next step.
Hi, General Carignan. Congratulations on your appointment today.
Thank you, Mercedes.
There's been a lot of questions about the capabilities of the Canadian Armed Forces, but I'm curious to know what you believe is the most significant military threat to Canada.
It is very difficult to frame the threat into one specific domain, because military threat can be nuanced with a bunch of other ones mixed together. So we can not only just face one single threat. But we have various actors who we know have conventional military capacity to hurt us, but also they have all kinds of other capacity that is outside of the military range as well. So this is why this collaboration with other agencies is so important to counter all forms of threat, some of them more military and some of them a little bit in the gray zone.
You've been the target of disinformation campaigns that General Eyre mentioned. How much of that do you expect to continue in terms of trying to sway Canadians' opinions or undermine our institutions?
Well, I can expect. I think we should be expecting some of that, and I think we will need all of your help, you out there, the real journalists, to counter that. I think this is so destructive in terms of trust in the institution. This is really not about me. It's not about me at all. It's about the trust that is attacked towards our institution, and what the chain reaction that can happen in terms of, again, attracting people towards the military and so on and so forth. So this is why this is so destructive to our whole democratic system.
Steve Chase with the Globe and Mail. Your
Hello, Steve.
predecessor, Wayne Eyre, talked about Canadians living in a more dangerous world than most of us have ever seen in our lifetime. I'd like to ask you about your thoughts on that. And particularly, do you see there's a serious risk that Canada will be drawn into an actual conflict in the next 5 to 10 years?
So, like many Canadians, we feel safe in Canada. We have historically. We have a great friend to our south. We have big oceans. We had a very deep frozen Arctic. And that has historically shielded us well from many threats. Not so much anymore. There are weapon systems that can reach the continent right now. The north is thawing, so we are much more open now to both conventional threats and unconventional threats all at the same time. So I think Canadians need to understand that if we are not ready, we might not be able to react appropriately in defense of them. Do I have a timeline? I have a bit of a timeline. I say we have about 5 years to get us close enough to be ready to counter those long-range type of threat. And then we are actively working with the NORAD, our NORAD friends, and our NATO allies to get ready for that.
Alex Ballingall with the Toronto Star. Just picking up where Steve was going there. You talk about 5 years for long-range threats. Wondering if you can clarify what exactly you're talking about and why it will take 5 years to be ready for that.
So we are assessing how our conventional opponents are getting ready and assessing their own capacity and their own military forces as well. So we're talking about China, we're talking about Russia. And we are tracking how they are currently evolving their capacities to reach us in Canada and continental Americas. So this is kind of how we can assess in terms of timeline, how much time we have to be ready to counter the threats that are coming from those conventional forces.
You mentioned recruitment being one of the most significant things you're going to have to tackle first, or the first priority. If I remember, the DPU had 2032 as the target date to be back to full strength in the military. Given what you're talking about now and these threats, and General Eyre talking about a pre-war, interwar period, is that an acceptable timeline, and how can, if not, how can you move that up?
So recruiting personnel is a complex affair. If we can get the momentum and get more people in, sometimes it has a contagious effect, and then we get people in. Generally, and we are also working closely with our partners to understand their own space as well. All the allies face the same type of challenges in terms of recruiting, so gathering their lessons learned, and then, you know, figuring out this space better. So we might be able to go quicker. If we can, by all means, we will keep building on that momentum. But initially, we got to craft, again, by priority and sequence it, because I've seen this in Iraq, where I was charged in supporting the Iraqis in transforming their whole defense and military, and then you can't undertake everything all at the same time. So that will be my first actions, is gather the team around. We'll figure out where it is that we're going to prioritize and sequence, and then we will gather all the other supporting agencies around to make sure that we can line this up and then expedite and streamline what we need to do.
Ashley Burke, CBC News. Congratulations on your new role.
Thank you, Ashley.
At the rate the military is going right now, experts say it could take decades, almost 40 years, to get back up to full strength. What's the date that you want to see the military back up to that full strength?
Like tomorrow. That's what I would like. So it's hard to tell exactly when this could actually happen. So we know that the qualification, the type of people we need, we are going to work very hard at removing the obstacles to make sure that we recruit in a streamlined fashion. So again, we may get more people than we think. We may get less. It's very hard to actually predict when people are going to decide to join the military. So we are tracking statistics. We are tracking interest. We're going to be going in some areas where we know we have a lot of candidates that would be interested, and so on and so forth. So, but again, I would like everybody in by tomorrow, but then again, we need to have the capacity to train them. So this is all needs to be laid out appropriately, so we can train people as they come in and get them ready for what they need to do.
Is your goal within 5 years, or maybe there's a broad timeline you can give? And then just for my follow-up, you were in charge of changing the military's culture. Has the culture changed enough, and where will that land now on your priority list?
Oh, it's at the heart of everything we do. So I had set a course 3 years ago. It's funny, we're in the 5-year time of zone, but I had set a course for a 5-year to have caused irreversible change. Our assessment at the moment, after 3 years, is that we are on track to get there. Not everything is going to be perfect tomorrow. We will always deal with misconduct, but it's how we navigate, it's how we deal with them that is also the key. And then measuring how our team how our members' experience is as part of these teams. So again, assessing the threat that is coming our way, we need to have a certain level of readiness by the time, when the time comes, and then we assess that the 4 or 5 year period will need to be at the ready.
For culture and 5 years for readiness.
So cultures, we still have 2 years to go to be where I would like this to be. So again, we'll keep absolutely focused on that aspect. But I would say globally now for the defense team, for the CAF, we want to have some capabilities in place within the 5 year mark.
Hi, Alessia Pasifimi from the Canadian Press. Congratulations.
Thank you.
General Eyre said that his top priority was stabilizing the CAF in the middle of a sexual misconduct crisis. Sorry, going kind of off of the previous question, what's yours, or is it the recruitment issues?
Sorry, say again?
General Eyre said that his top priority was changing the culture after the sexual misconduct crises. What's your main theme of the job that you're taking? Like, what's your top priority here, or is it recruitment?
So my job is to translate what Canadians want out of their forces into actual capabilities, of which there are many things underneath of that. So professional conduct will always be at the heart of everything we do, because how you prepare teams for the work that they need to do is what building strong teams is what we are about. So that will always be at the heart of what we do. We have a specific comprehensive plan that we have implemented, and that will keep going. So that's at the heart. Now, as CDS, I have a broader mandate, which is preparing the CAF for their operation and then their overall readiness.
And what's your message to Canadians about what kind of military we have here in Canada?
My message to Canadians is give us a shot. Try. Let's come and join us, and then you will be surprised as to what you can actually accomplish.
Giuseppe Marconi, Emigrati, Ethnic Media. My question, first of all, congratulations. What is your message for the women and minority group part of the CAF?
I would say the same thing, because all great Canadians should be joining us. Like any Canadians who want to serve, the door is wide open for them, and we want to recruit from the whole strength of Canadians. So join us, give us a chance, and then you'll be surprised as to what you can actually accomplish.
Thank you very much.
Madame Carignan, Valérie Gamache de Radio-Canada, félicitations.
Merci.
Je vais vous entendre aussi sur le recrutement. Est-ce qu'il y a un plan? C'est-à-dire, est-ce qu'il y a un moment, je dirais, il y a une espèce de plan sur la table de dire, ben, on veut avoir tant de militaires au sein des forces à telle date. Est-ce que ça, c'est déjà dans vos plans d'établir une espèce de timeline?
Oui. Alors, il y a un plan spécifique où on focus sur tant de personnes par année dans tel type de métier. On sait où il nous manque des gens. Donc, on met l'emphase vraiment sur ces chiffres-là, et on est capable, bien sûr, avec la science, de prédire qu'en recrutant 6 000 personnes par année, ça va prendre tant de temps pour arriver à bon port, là. Mais encore une fois, ça, c'est de la science qui ne prédit pas nécessairement combien de personnes vont décider de venir cogner à notre porte, combien de personnes vont passer à travers l'entraînement, etc. Donc, il y a beaucoup d'autres facteurs humains qui rentrent en ligne de compte ici. Fait que oui, on a un plan, on sait combien, on sait où, mais ce que je veux faire, c'est revisiter tout ça avec mon équipe, pour voir si on ne pourrait pas créer des opportunités d'aller plus rapidement.
Et c'est quoi le principal obstacle? Pourquoi les gens ont plus envie de faire partie des forces armées?
Encore une fois, il y a plusieurs facteurs qui sont en cours, qui rentrent au travers de tout ça. Les gens ne savent pas qu'ils peuvent servir d'inforce. On se présente dans certaines communautés et les gens ne sont pas au courant qu'ils peuvent joindre les forces. Moi, à Val-des-Sources, j'avais jamais vu un militaire de ma vie avant de joindre La première fois que j'ai vu un uniforme, c'est quand j'ai eu à le repasser pendant mon camp recru. Alors, il y a beaucoup de Canadiens qui sont pas au courant que les forces, c'est une option comme carrière. Donc, ça, c'est un gros facteur. Le deuxième facteur, c'est qu'il y a beaucoup de perceptions qui sont totalement fausses. Il y a beaucoup de perceptions qui sont pas la réalité de ce qu'on vit comme militaire. Il y a des stéréotypes, il y a toutes sortes de choses là, aussi qui rentrent en ligne de compte. Encore une fois, de prendre cet engagement-là, c'est aussi une autre grosse décision qu'on a à prendre des fois quand on est très jeune. Alors, énormément de facteurs qui viennent contribuer à l'attraction et au recrutement en tant que tel.
What this moment means to you, and also what your message is to the next generation of young women coming up in the forces.
This means a lot to me because this is what I've done all of my adult life. I have done this. I'm going to get a little bit emotional here. I've done this because I love it. And I mostly love the people who are part of this and then give generously of themselves every day. So this is what it means to me is that I get now to lead these fantastic people in, very difficult times. It's not going to be easy, folks. I'm telling you, there's nothing that is going to be easy going forward. But I'm so proud to be able to do this job with this absolutely fantastic team. What this means for women or marginalized group, racialized Canadians, the LGBTQI plus community, Indigenous people, it means that it's possible, folks. The door is open. Give us a shot. And it means that it's possible now. Anything is possible. This is actually what my parents used to tell me. Anything is possible. You can do anything. But I realized in 1986 that that was not necessarily true for everybody. Even if the doors were open, perceptions stay. There's unconscious biases that, frankly, I do have to question myself regularly. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to get like that, but this is what it means to me. It means a lot. Merci.
Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm obviously Minister Bill Blair, Minister of National Defense, and today I think we've had a very good day, an opportunity to acknowledge the exemplary service of former Chief of Defense Staff, now Wayne Eyre, for his remarkable 40 years of service to his country and leadership of the Canadian Armed Forces, and to welcome a new Chief of Defense. I think it's a historic appointment, and we're very, very pleased with the choice. I think it portends very well for the future of the Canadian Armed Forces, and I think it is also reflective of the work that's been ongoing over the past number of years to reconstitute, rebuild, and re-strengthen the Canadian Armed Forces to do the important work that we require of them. And I'll be happy to answer any questions any of you may have in what order you've decided.
Mike Lukather from CTV News. On another subject, multiple Liberal sources are telling CTV News that Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan will be quitting cabinet and won't run in the next election. I wanted to ask you, is this the sign of a government that is now a sinking ship?
First of all, I consider Mr. Seamus O'Regan a good friend. I have not heard directly from him with respect. Just as I was waiting to come over here, I was advised that that information was being talked about in the press. Frankly, I have no knowledge of the circumstances that's leading to that decision, if in fact Seamus has made it. I'll wait to speak to him before I comment. However, I would also acknowledge, I think he has been a remarkable member of our government. He has served very capably in every job that the Prime Minister has given him, most recently as our Minister of Labour. I've always much valued his advice and support on all the important work that I've attempted to undertake.
I want to ask you about the state of the government right now. When you consider that there have been reports and rumors out there of either a shuffle or Ms. Freeland not having the confidence of the Prime Minister's office, does it make it difficult to govern and to do your job when all of that is going wrong?
No, I want to assure you and all Canadians, and certainly the members of the Canadian Armed Forces, I am completely focused on the job that I've been given. I think the Minister of National Defence is an extraordinarily important job. I have a great team of people in my ministry office at the Department of National Defence, and now with new leadership at the Canadian Armed Forces, as well as an acknowledgement of the extraordinary leadership that has been serving there for some time. We've got an important job to do, and the focus is on getting it done. And as General Eyre referred in his remarks today, I think our focus has to be on delivering for Canadians, for our allies, and for the Canadian Armed Forces, and that's where my focus is.
The Toronto Star. General Eyre in his comments was talking about being in a pre-war or interwar period. I'm wondering if that's the way that you see Canada's position right now along a trajectory to potential involvement in a war, and if so, how do you explain that position to Canadians who might find it quite alarming that to hear him talk like that?
I think General Eyre's remarks reflected what we see is what the Governor General referred to as a number of significant polycrises that are occurring around the world. The invasion in Iraq, the conflict in the Middle East, some growing conflicts now in the Indo-Pacific as well, with the advent of climate change and greater accessibility to our Arctic and the activities of certain of our adversaries there. It also is a requirement for us to respond appropriately. And finally, the very nature of conflict is also changing with new technologies and cyber attacks, with hypersonic missiles, and with there have been a number of other significant technical innovations as well. The work that we have been doing in the Canadian Armed Forces that has been very ably led by General Eyre and now will be ably led by General Carignan is to make sure that we are well prepared for any crisis that may occur. I think the best way to avoid war is to be prepared. And that I think is the most appropriate way to deter potential adversaries is by strong preparation. That work is going on in NATO through our modernization of NORAD. That work is going on here in North America through the investments that we have been making in the Canadian Armed Forces and the important work that we have still ahead of us. I think that being better prepared to maintain the peace is the undertaking that we're part of, and the best way to do that is to be prepared for any conflict.
Just as a follow-up, General Carignan was talking about 4 to 5 year timeline to be ready to face threats that might be coming from China and Russia. Is that a timeline you're comfortable with, and is there anything we can do to speed up that readiness?
One of the things that the Prime Minister has made it very clear to me is we are on a schedule. We have a number of undertakings that we are engaged in. To increase the numbers of members serving in the Canadian Armed Forces, to get new ships, new planes, new capabilities for our armed forces. That's the priority. I have also been directed by the Prime Minister to do the work that is necessary to accelerate any of those initiatives to the extent possible and appropriate. And so that work is underway at the Canadian Armed Forces. I think when General Carignan makes reference to that 4 or 5 year window among our allies, there has been discussion about the readiness of hostile activities, or hostile states to engage in conflict, and we believe that there is a critical point in the future to which they'll be ready and we have to be ready to meet the moment. And so we are very much seized by that requirement for us to get things done as quickly as possible and at the same time. I think it's also important to acknowledge we work closely with our allies, we work very closely with Canadian industry. Delivering on those requirements requires a very strong and collaborative effort. That effort is well underway right now. Hey, Murray.
Murray Brewster with CBC. General Carignan's timeline of 5 years roughly, and what you have been saying has been discussed among allies, doesn't necessarily match with the government's defense policy update, nor some of the timelines that have been laid out by the government. So how do you reconcile that? And will Canada be ready within 5 years?
Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity to reconcile that, because when we brought forward the defense policy update, I think it's a very clear articulation of the challenges we face and the work that is ahead of us. It did contain very specific initiatives that we were quite prepared to undertake and will undertake beginning immediately, and that are fully funded. But it also identified, I think very clearly, 10 other initiatives that we know that we're going to have to do, and it has to be done carefully and appropriately, but with a sense of urgency. And so we have been working since the publication of the Defense Policy Update in April of this year. We have been working with the Royal Canadian Navy, just as an example, on one of those initiatives with respect to submarines. And we've now got a green light, and we've got the opportunity now to go out into the market, to go to those countries that currently have, for example, submarines under production, to see if they meet the requirements of our Navy going forward. That enables us to accelerate those initiatives, and when that work is done, and it's well underway now, when that work is done, we'll be able to go back to government and say, okay, this is what the opportunity is, this is how much it will cost, this is how quickly we can get it delivered, and at that point in time, I'll be able to make the case to include it in the funding envelope. And there are a number of those initiatives currently underway that we've got some work to do, but we're doing that work now, Maureen, as I'm sure you heard today from General Eyre and from General Carignan, and I hope you're hearing it from me. We are all seized with a sense of urgency to get this done, but we also understand the importance of doing it right.
Will Canada be ready in 5 years' time? Can you assure that?
I'm doing absolutely everything within my power, and I've got a remarkable team in the Canadian Armed Forces at D&D and in other departments of government that are also quite engaged in this, the Minister of Industry, the Minister of PSPC, the Minister of Global Affairs. We are all working to make sure that we do all of the things that are necessary to be ready to meet that moment. As General Eyre articulated in his, I think, exceptional remarks today, that our history is not being prepared for conflict in 2014, in 1914, in 1939, 1950, even in 2001. We weren't always ready. We see, the intelligence is clear. I think there is a great clarity of purpose and vision for the future and the work that needs to be done. We're all working full out to get it done. And I think it's important to acknowledge it actually takes time to like we're building new surface combatant ships, the new River class destroyers. The construction has begun on that, but it's going to take time to deliver them. And therefore, we're also investing in the maintenance of our Halifax class frigates so that the Navy can continue to do the job until the new River class destroyers are ready. And so the coordination of those efforts is all underway, and at the same time, there's a great sense of urgency to move those procurements forward and faster, to deliver them faster, because we believe that there is an urgency in making sure that the Canadian Armed Forces is ready. There was also some reference today, and I think it's important to acknowledge, and I think General Carignan identified it as her greatest priority, is recruitment and retention of members of the Canadian Armed Forces. People is our greatest asset, and we've got some really important work to do there, but I think we've got great opportunities to solve that issue as well.
Blair, bonjour, Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. Just to follow up on this, if we want to be ready in 5 years, don't we have to move ahead on the timeline on the subs and the fighter jets?
There are a number of important discussions. First of all, we have signed a contract for 88 new F-35 fighter jets. They will begin to be delivered, I think, in 2026 is when that delivery began. I've had some conversations today with the NORAD commander, who was kind enough to come here for our change of command, about some work that we might be able to do together, some investments in infrastructure and capability here in Canada to enable us to accelerate the delivery and training on those programs. It's work that that we understand the urgency of getting them delivered. But we have a capability within the Royal Canadian Air Force. We've invested fairly significantly in the training of their pilots, but also their ground crews, getting and accelerating to the extent possible the delivery of those important capabilities is going to be essential to us. But at the same time, we also have to work with the manufacturer. We are also in, like you see, the market, the global marketplace, particularly among NATO allies, for this type of capability is very strong. We're all moving ahead, and quite frankly, we're all competing for delivery. We've signed the contracts, and we're moving ahead with that procurement, but we are in a queue, and we'll get it done as quickly as we can. Ashley.
Hi, Ashley Brook, CBC News. Right now, there was about 70,000 people between 2023 to 2024 that were interested in joining the military, but only 4,301 people got into uniform. There's always been a system in place to get people through, so why is there this backlog now? What's going on? And do you have a key thing that you think could address this?
Yeah, there's a number of important initiatives that are underway, and we're examining how do we address that. Quite frankly, that uptake for 70,000 Canadians who've applied to serve their country is not good enough. We have to go faster. And one of the things that I've learned in a number of different positions that I've held is that often Canadians will come and apply for a job somewhere, an opportunity, a career, but they'll also apply in 2 or 3 other places. And if the first place that calls is the place where they go, we've got to be the first. And I've talked to the Armed Forces about that. The General Carignan has identified it as her greatest priority. We've got to look at all of our onboarding processes. It's not just recruitment, because quite frankly, we both know that a lot of Canadians want to serve their country. But we've got to deal with any impediments or delays that might currently exist in getting people in the door, begin that training. There are obviously medical issues, and it's important that people meet the appropriate standards, both medical and security background checks. But the sequencing of how that's done and the alacrity with which we bring to those processes, I think, is really important. We've got to be able, when people make that choice to serve, we know many of them are extraordinary Canadians, and we want them in the Canadian Armed Forces. We've got to get back to them quickly. We've got to offer them a position, and then we've got to, when we get them into the organization, we've got to also demonstrate that we are also going to invest in their training, but also in them and in their families, because one of the things that we're also challenged with is retention. Some of the numbers that General Eyre has shared with me most recently indicate that we're moving in a very positive direction there. However, there's still a great deal of work to do. There are a number of initiatives that are currently very much in discussion, and we'll have more to say about them later, but I think there's a real opportunity to give more Canadians an opportunity, and permanent residents too, I should include them, give more people an opportunity to serve their country. I think there is something extraordinary about service to your country and to your community. I think the opportunity to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces for any period of time would help make better citizens, and it would help improve the readiness of the Canadian Armed Forces. And so we're going to do everything that is necessary to meet that challenge and to get the people and the skill sets that we need.
Have you received any sort of assurances that the military would move forward with something, which I think is probationary period, is what you might have suggested before, to get people when they're calling, like right in the door, and then you do the security after?
I've simply shared with them that in my experience, I joined the police services nearly 50 years ago, and when I joined, I was on probation for 18 months. It gave the police service an opportunity to find out if I was the right person for their profession, but it also gave me an opportunity to decide if that profession was right for me. Every police officer in this country has gone through a probationary period, and I think if we adopted the same opportunity in the Canadian Armed Forces, it would give, I think, people an appropriate chance. They could come in and begin their training. You know, basically, in basic training, we're not sharing state secrets with them, but we could determine a level of fitness, we could do security background checks. All of that could take place while they're in service, and I think that would expedite the onboarding of people into the service. And those few people that may not meet the standards that we quite appropriately put in place, then there's during a probationary period, it's not that dramatic to thank them for their brief service and send them on their way, but I think it gives us an opportunity to be far more efficient in onboarding people and really giving Canadians, I think, the important and extraordinary opportunity to serve their country. Hello.
Hi, thanks for taking our questions. Alessia Pescini with the Canadian Press. Was it important for your government to promote a woman into this role, and if so, why?
I think that First of all, the person that we promoted into this role was an eminently qualified person to do this job. I think General Carignan's 35 years of service to her country and all of the extraordinary roles that she had held eminently make her the best person qualified for the position. The determination on who was the right person for this job wasn't based on the consideration of gender. It was really based on qualification and ability. Having said that, I also want to acknowledge this is a historic moment for our armed forces in that our new Chief of Defense also happens to be a woman who has spent 35 years of her life in service to her country, performing many extraordinary roles where she has always demonstrated excellence of leadership. And that gives me great confidence. But I also believe that I hope that it will be an encouragement to others who wish to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces, or some members who are also serving, about that there is a place for everyone in the Canadian Armed Forces. So I hope that is one of the perceptions that this will create. But I want to make it very clear, General Carignan was picked for this job because she was the best person for this job.
Okay, so about how she was the best person to pick for this job, why do you think she was the best pick, and what do you expect she'll bring to the role?
Let me also acknowledge that we had a number of candidates that put themselves forward for this position. They were all extraordinary. One of the things that I wanted to acknowledge is that the level of leadership in the Canadian Armed Forces, I think, is second to none among any of the armed forces I deal with around the world. They're an extraordinary group of people. We asked them about leadership. I often look at that job, Chief of Defense, as a leader of leaders, and they lead an extraordinary team of leaders. And so we looked for the person that we believed would have the right leadership style, the right temperament, the right experience, as well as that deep resolve that I think is evident when you speak to General Carignan to get the job done and to do what is required. And although they were all exceptional candidates, I think General Carignan emerged as the most qualified candidate and was, for me, the obvious choice.
Hi, Steve Chase, Globe and Mail. Just a quick question. Is there any likelihood, any significant likelihood we would reach 2% of GDP before 2032?
I've got work to do. And right now, with the plan that the Canadian Armed Forces currently has in place for recruitment, for example, they've said that they will get their staffing back up by 2032. We are looking at a number of important initiatives to accelerate that. There are a number of other significant procurements, and just as an example I've already cited, for submarines, where we are doing the work necessary to accelerate that procurement process. And so I think if we do that work successfully, and I have every confidence that we'll have the opportunity to go back before the government and to make the case that path to 2% can be accelerated, and we will achieve it. I think it was important for us to articulate a comprehensive, but at the same time, realistic path to 2%, and that's how we came to 2032. But we also tried to acknowledge in that explanation that we had other work to do, and that we're going to continue to pursue that work with resolve, urgency, and purpose to see if we can get it done quicker. Hi, Mercedes.
Hi, Minister. I wanted to ask you about the numbers behind the defense spending, because I know that the announcement to hit 2% is fairly recent, and we heard a range of numbers. I think you said in another interview $60 billion a year, but I was wondering if you could just, for the record, tell us how much you're going to have to spend a year to get to 2% by 2032.
Yeah, it's interesting. First of all, let me acknowledge 2% is a completely valid metric. It is the metric that has been agreed to and committed to by NATO members. But 2% is a metric about spending. How many dollars you have to spend, and I've done a rough calculation. We anticipate our GDP will be around $3 trillion, and 2% of that would be about $60 million. That's how I got the number, but I think there's also a possibility that number will go beyond $3 trillion as a GDP. So it's one of the sort of metrics that we are monitoring very carefully as to where we'll have to be to meet that commitment of 2%. The spending requirement puts a certain amount of money in the window. Quite frankly, if the Finance Department had come to me and said, okay, Bill, you can make 2% this year, here's $14 billion, and I think that's about the amount of money. There was no way to actually spend that $14 billion. I couldn't acquire the capabilities that the Canadian Armed Forces was identifying that quickly. And so it actually takes time. And so we've tried to be as frank, candid, and realistic about when we can do this and how quickly we can do it. We've tried to also be very clear. These are the big items that we have to purchase. But last year, the Department of Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces actually signed about 145,000 contracts. So it's a lot of really big things, but it's a lot of little things as well, and we've got to do it all right. And so I think my responsibility is to get that job done and to get those capabilities as quickly as possible. But as a government also has a responsibility to invest Canadian taxpayer dollars to the best possible outcome and effect. And so I also look at what's the return on the investment. It's one of the reasons, quite recently, I was down in Halifax and we were talking about the construction of the River-class destroyers. It's a very long, expensive project, almost $60 billion. But it also sustains 10,800 Canadian jobs over the next 25 years. It adds $40 billion back into our GDP. And so I hope we're able to demonstrate that we're not just spending money, we're investing money. And that the return on investment is not merely increased capabilities for the Canadian Armed Forces, although that's my first priority. It also is a matter of investing Canadian taxpayer dollars in Canada, in Canadian workers, Canadian industry, the Canadian economy. And so that's the work that we're also trying to coordinate.
So should we take that as an indication that you're going to try to build the subs in Canada?
No, ma'am. Take it as an indication. We're going to go get the best subs for the Canadian Armed Forces that are available. But one of the things about submarines, as an example, or any major procurement, 30% of the cost of those projects is usually the acquisition of the asset. 70% is on sustainment of the asset. Whoever and whatever submarines we may acquire, we're going to have to build new submarine pens on both coasts. We're going to have a maintenance capability on both sides. We're going to have to hire new submariners and train new submariners on those boats. There are very significant long-term investments in a submarine fleet that we're going to have to make, which would amount to about 70% of that project. I think first priority is get the Navy what it needs. And then the second thing is make sure that we are able to sustain that capability over time and build upon it. One of the things I'd also like to avoid is I think, as General Eyre shared with us today, we go through periods of boom and bust in military defense. I'd like to avoid that. And rather than simply going out and buying some major new platforms and then sort of not doing anything new for 45 years and then having to fix everything at the end, I think that a different approach, an approach that talks about ongoing development, innovation, and sustainment of those fleets and more realistic timelines about when they'll have to be replaced is also part of the work that we're doing. Thank you all.